play. And another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul, offensive foul coming up. Ken Valentine standing right there.
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
You are listening to the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart of umhoops.com. Dylan, this is the time of year. There's snow on the ground, it's cold, and we've got some scorching hot Big Ten takes. This is what the pod is all about.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about the whole Big Ten. I feel like we kind of lost our identity a bit when we've just been focusing on Michigan and Michigan State.
I know. Remember the days of the old power rankings on the back end of the episodes?
Yep, the people that listen to those whole 95-minute episodes, they know they've been missing it.
Well, today we're just going Big Ten specific. We're going to go buy, sell through the whole league based on the first, we're basically 2.5 weeks in. 2 weeks? Yeah, I guess you're right, 2 weeks. Everyone's played about 3 or 4 games at this point. So, we're going to go through buy, sell, hold. Before that, why don't you tell the folks what you got going on UM Hoops real quick?
Well, we're in full season mode. We got a lot of content about recruiting. We have a lot of content about Michigan thus far. We're going to have some stories this week kind of looking at what we can take away from the first few games. Obviously, it's just 3 games for Michigan, but kind of the first chance to see what Juwan Howard's offense and defense looks like, dive into some trends, stuff like that. What do you have over at The Athletic?
Well, from the weekend, got a story on Albion basketball and them playing their first game since Zachary Winston's death. Was able to speak to Coach Jody May late Friday night and kind of just talk about the week that was for that program and just stuff that no one should have to go through. So. You got that up there. We have the coverage from Michigan State's win over Seton Hall, and I will be up in East Lansing tonight for a game versus Charleston Southern, and see what comes of that. I imagine that'll be over pretty early, so we'll see. But then, more importantly, later this week, off to Maui for some golf and maybe some basketball on the side. So very excited for that. So make sure you're subscribing to UM Hoops. Make sure you are subscribing to The Athletic. If you support this podcast, that's the best way to do so. Leave us a good review in the iTunes store if you'd be so kind. Make sure you tell like-minded basketball freaks to check this podcast out, and tell your Big Ten friends to give this one a listen, because we're about to I don't know how many Big Ten full league breakdowns that you're getting via podcast anywhere else in the country on November 18th other than this podcast. So this is what we do. Are you excited, Dylan? I can see it in your face.
What we do. I'm excited.
I know. So we're going to just go by Ken Palm's ratings right now through the league. And like I said, buy, sell all the way down from Michigan State to our friends at Nebraska on the bottom. We haven't yet talked about the win at Seton Hall, which will easily be one of the best kind of non-conference games that you'll see in college basketball anywhere, I imagine, this year. The first half was a bit of a rock fight, but that second half was just trading haymakers, and the place was going wild. My take on it not being a hostile road environment for Michigan State was woeful. That'll be one of my worst takes of the year. That place was rocking, and it was a true road game. So, what you were at home watching along? What was jumping out to you other than Miles Powell being from another planet?
It was certainly one of the most dramatic games of the year, I would say. I don't know if it was the best game. I don't think either team left that game and thought, "Oh man, we really played great."
No.
Which is fine and good, and it's a great win for Michigan State on the road against a team that's ranked in the top 20 right now. It turns out that really it just came down to Miles Powell making plays for Seton Hall, and then Michigan State seeming like they were done, and then coming back with an answer down the stretch. And that was some really impressive spine from Michigan State, but also something you'd probably expect from Michigan State given how this team is put together and what they've already played and been through as a team, right?
For sure. And just on your other point, like I do feel like both teams would probably say they didn't play that well, but would also say a lot of it is because of what the other team was doing to them. Yeah, I mean, Seton Hall is just enormous, and it's very rare you're going to see Michigan State shoot under 40% on twos. And a lot of that had to do with they were just, it felt like they were just kind of throwing the ball up over the trees a lot. And, a guy like, I talked to Thomas Kithier after the game, kind of like one-on-one in his locker, and like you would have thought he just got back from like a tour of duty or something. Like it looked like he was just exhausted. So all those guys, and on the other side, Seton Hall, they're playing easily one of the three best teams in the country. And I know that you are not a big fan of the Pirates, but I also think that I know they lost at home, but I also think they held their own against what's probably the best team in the land.
I'm worried for Seton Hall that their season is going to be defined by a exciting home loss to Michigan State. You're not that good of a team if you're getting hyped up for a home loss. That's all. I'll put that out there. I know Michigan State's great. I think this says a lot more about Michigan State winning on the road than any sort of endorsement of Seton Hall actually being some kind of great team.
I would agree. I would agree.
Pretty good teams, NIT teams even, should be able to give a team a game at home, especially this early in the season.
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
Fair.
I think Michigan State, if you play that game 20 times, they're not going to shoot 40% on twos. Mm-hmm. They shot 59% at the free throw line. Cassius Winston got in foul trouble, and they still figured out how to win the game. That's what's impressive about it, is that they still had that way to figure it out late, despite the fact that they shouldn't have really been in the game, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they left so many chances there. I mean, I don't know. That's where I fall in the performance, and it says a lot about to be able to win on the road without playing perfect is impressive.
No doubt. And let's talk about the finish there, because I think it said a lot about where Michigan State is. And if you go back, obviously Malik Hall was a game changer in the second half. But those last few,
putting it lightly,
those last few sequences, when you get the three from Rocket Watts on the run, and then you get a three from Cassius Winston on the run, and you had that beautiful play out of the timeout that ended with Xavier Tillman making that little quick pass across the lane to a cutting Malik Hall for a really good finish. That was probably an end one. It was like game-winning stuff like that, I think, is when you kind of see the chops and the experience of a team that played in the national championship game. Like, that is big-time stuff on the road, and that's the difference of a team that's experienced in mid-November. That's winning basketball that maybe if a couple of those threes had fallen against Kentucky, you would have seen that there, and people would be talking about Michigan State even a little bit more differently than they are now. But the fact that they were able to make those plays when it counted most, I think, kind of says, is really the measure of what this team is, more so than probably anything else.
Played in the Final Four, not the national championship game.
Yeah.
The one guy who you mentioned briefly, Malik Hall, has not played in any of those games and just went crazy in that second half. Did you see that coming at all?
No, not at all. And I liked him this summer. We talked about him on the pod this summer.
Yeah, you were tempering your hype on him, I feel like, over the last few weeks after he put up 0 points in the first two games. But you were all in on him in August.
Because, like I said back then, he was the closest thing they had to a proxy of Kenny Goins, which is, if you wanted to try to replicate anything from last year's team, it's that, right? I mean,
down to the number.
A guy exactly, a guy who is reliable jump shooter, who can finish when needed to and grab some rebounds and knows where he is and knows how to set a good screen, things like that. That makes all the difference in the world. I think I would caution people about thinking that like Malik Hall's about to go out and start averaging double figures every game. But
There's also a spot for him to do that.
I have kind of felt like he would ultimately be the long-term answer. This happened way faster than I could have imagined. But he's a game changer if he can do anything resembling what he did that night.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen someone have an amazing game early on in a career and then take a long time to find that again, like seasons or months or whatever. So it's hard to know what to take of it. But if he can provide 60% of that on a regular basis, that's a huge win as far as kind of filling out the rotation. Because one of the things we've been talking about is what's the answer at the 4? Like Kithier is solid. I don't think you're not going to ever have Kithier as a go-to guy, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to have Kithier maybe as a consistent pick and pop guy, although he did hit a 3 on whatever Thursday as well.
But I also think like Kithier's greatest value is probably the most reliable backup at the 5, and being able to give you 15 solid minutes at the 4.
And you don't, and that's enough, right? Like that's 25 minutes,
right?
And you need to figure out that other chunk of minutes at the 4, and Hall really fits in nicely there. Mm-hmm. If he can just hit 37% on threes, right?
Yes,
he can do everything else well enough that's just about all you really need to ask from him.
Totally, because they obviously don't trust Marcus Bingham yet. I don't think he played any second half minutes at Seton Hall. He has certainly shown some flashes, but like I wouldn't say like the conversation of him turning the corner or anything like that is there yet. I'm sure he's going to dominate, some of these Charleston Southerns and schools like that, and people will get hyped up. But at the end of the day, how many second half minutes is he getting in games that matter? So, in that vein, like I said, if Xavier Tillman's going to have games where he gets in some foul trouble and has some issues or whatever it may be, where you're going to need Kithier playing the 5 in the second half. And at that time, it's either going to be go Aaron Henry at the 4 and go a little bit smaller, or if you have Malik Hall, that's a pretty good solution.
Yeah, and it saved Michigan State's ass in
no doubt
New Jersey.
No doubt.
I have one more Michigan State question for you.
Yeah.
Rocket Watts, where are you at with his early season performance? He's shooting 25% on 2s, 23% on 3s, made some big plays late, playing good defense. Is it like any sort of concern? I feel like the 2 is kind of a spot where you're wondering where that's going right now.
I wouldn't say concern is not the word. Is not a word I would use. And that's when it comes to Rocket. I think he's still trying to figure out how to dial it back a little bit and understand the pace of a game. But he was aiming shots until he made that first one, or until he made that big one late against Seton Hall. He was just a guy who clearly just couldn't buy a made jumper, and a lot of them were bad shot choices. But I feel like he's going to learn a lot, and every game is just like a massive learning experience at this point. And getting him to go and play 3 games in 3 days in Maui, I think is going to accelerate things, and that the guy that we see against Duke, maybe in early December, is going to look a hell of a lot different than the guy that you saw against Kentucky. Like, I'm in on Rocket Watts. I think he's a great piece for this team. He's only going to get a lot better.
Okay. I'll buy that. I think Gabe Brown needs to continue getting more minutes. I think he really makes that backcourt rotation a little more dangerous, a little more. He looks for his shot. He's an aggressive offensive player in a sense that some other guys who are out there quite a bit are not necessarily right now.
I think that's a great point. He's shown some rebounding. He's been willing to get in there a little way more than he ever was last year. I think he trusts his body to hold up a little bit. Maybe more importantly, he's taken more 2s than 3s so far, which I don't know how many people would have predicted. But he can put the ball on the deck a little bit, and he's still he's other than Cassius, he's as reliable of a 3-point shooter as they have.
Yeah, and he's 6'7". I mean, he doesn't need to create out of ball screens or crazy ISO action. He needs to just be a straight line driver off a closeout. And he's proven, I think, that he can do that and get in there and finish, which is a huge asset, and he has the shot that he's going to be able to create those looks fairly easily compared to a guy like Aaron Henry, who maybe teams are going to dare to shoot instead of allow to drive by.
Yeah, and as he gets more confident, I think crashing, you might be able to even see him be used as a cutter a little bit more. Go in, draw contact, do things like that. I mean, he's a crazy athlete. He can go over top guys. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see where he goes from here. You want to slide down to the next one?
Well, are we buying or selling or holding?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and buy.
Yeah, I think Michigan State's a buy right now. More of a hold, right? Like, I don't think anything's changed to make you like Michigan State maybe more than where they stood in the preseason. I think it's kind of a neutral situation, but they're still the class of the Big Ten right now, I'd say.
No doubt. And really, we're saying all of this, and maybe the most interesting thing is, like, Aaron Henry's played okay. I don't think there has not yet been the kind of brilliant Aaron Henry moments or anything like that. Cassius has kind of been up and down. He's shooting 34% on threes. I think he will get better, obviously. And Tillman has had stretches where he's played poorly. He was not good against Seton Hall. And he had some bad stretches against Kentucky. So a lot of that has to do with playing against size. And we talked about that after that game at Seton Hall, where he says he just completely lacks patience when he plays against guys that are bigger than him, and he tries to rush shots, and he doesn't use his skill set. But, he's under 50% on twos, and I 1 for 7 on threes. I'm just like, he gets that look for a reason.
Yep. He has. I also think that Tillman's production is going to always kind of be linked to how teams defend Cassius, and the looks that he gets are going to be dependent on that, right? And the quality of the looks. And we've talked in the offseason that Tillman's not really a go-to post-up scorer on the block. The more you do that, the more his efficiency is going to drop a bit. Last year, he didn't do that all that often. It was mostly derived from Cassius ball screens, finishing around the basket, stuff like that. So I think there's an adjustment process there for Tillman as he grows into that role where really he's the only guy you're going to throw the ball in the block, but he doesn't do that necessarily as naturally as someone like Nick Ward did last year.
No doubt.
So I think that's part of it. And one thing I'd add on Aaron Henry, his usage rate on offense is exactly the same as it was last year, 15.7%, which is pretty low. And if he's going to be that breakout guy, he's been super efficient in his minutes, but he's just not aggressively looking for his offense within the flow of the offense. And that's almost a harder thing to change than just making shots, right?
Yeah.
That tends to be a fairly sticky stat that just, if you're a 16% usage rate guy, it's hard to get to 24%, which you would see for a kind of a go-to offensive player. So that's something to watch as well.
Yeah, and again, I think some of that has to do with the opponents. They've only played 3 games, and 2 of them were Kentucky and Seton Hall. So I think you might get a little better feel of the quote-unquote Big 3 in Maui.
Yeah, and that'll be exciting.
Absolutely.
So we're both buying on Michigan State?
Yes.
And what is up next?
Next we have, at number 2 on Ken Palm's ratings, the team that I picked to finish second in the Big Ten, I will say.
A little early for the backslap.
Ohio State. Oh, no, I'm backslapping all day. Ohio State looks pretty damn good. Wins over Cincinnati and Villanova. They'll probably be 7-0 going into a road game at North Carolina on December 4th. They are one of the interesting stories, I think, early stories, not only in the Big Ten but in college basketball.
Yeah, and they just beat down Villanova.
Yeah.
Villanova's ready to withdraw from the Gavitt games permanently. That
was good.
But a couple interesting things here. One, I want to start with Ohio State's scheduling, and the fact that Ohio State never plays exempt tournaments drives me crazy. And I think it's bullshit that teams aren't playing in those. If you're a team of that size and you're not playing in those, I don't know what you're doing. Playing only home games until December is weak.
I of course agree. I think every team should play at least one true non-conference road game. But the offset of what Ohio State does, I mean, they do have a counter to playing in these exempt tournaments. They play Kentucky on a neutral court in Vegas, and they play West Virginia in Cleveland in something called the Cleveland Classic, which I didn't. Is that even a thing? Is that
apparently it is now? What I'm saying is, Michigan State plays Kentucky on a neutral in an exempt tournament.
Sure,
it's not rare to have a team play and like just replacing a showcase game with an exempt tournament with a showcase game is still weak, and they never play in exempt tournaments. I think it
is odd.
I assume they want more home games or what, but playing your first 7-8 games at home seems a little Bush League to me. Anyways, second point on Ohio State, and this is a good point, so we can get back into it here. I think it's just a matter. DJ Carton hasn't started yet, but I think all signs are that this is going to be really his team and built around him. He's using a quarter of their possessions, highest rate on the team. He has been efficient, productive, and he's just going to play more and more. I would be shocked if he's not starting by Big Ten play.
Yes.
That has come at the expense of Caleb Wesson's usage. He's down at 20%, and he was up at 29.9% last year. So all summer, I was skeptical to buy Ohio State because I was worried that they were going to build this team around a group that used 30% of possessions through Caleb Wesson. I think it's pretty notable that that's not what they're doing. And Caleb Wesson is a piece. He's playing pretty well and efficient and staying out of foul trouble, actually, which is new for him. But he's not that go-to guy that he was on last year's team. And he's not a guy where you're only throwing it into him in the post and playing all off of Wesson. So he's more of a weapon than the only weapon, which is important to note.
Agree. And they have guards, and they're letting it be a guard-driven team. And as a result, they have crazy balance. They have 8 players averaging between 7 and 11 points per game. No one who's played more than one game on the team is taking more than 7.5 shots per game. So it's this kind of just spread out attack. And like you said, their best player right now is coming off the bench. Best player, obviously Wesson is Wesson, but what DJ Carton's doing right now, he's the November 18th freshman of the year in the league, for sure, I would say. I watched all of his made baskets this morning.
Oh, look at you.
Oh, I was deep in it. And what's interesting is that, when I see his numbers, you might think he's just taking, a lot of jumpers or something like that. But, I mean, they're doing everything with him. They put him in high pick and rolls. They use him as a cutter. They use him in isolation. He scored.
You see that dunk?
The dunk against Villanova off that back door was just sick. His first step and his jab steps are next level. Like it doesn't look like there's a lot of guys that can stay in front of him. And then once he does get past his initial defender, he's got this whole bag of tricks of floaters and finishes and step backs and all this stuff that, I mean, he looks like he's going to be one of the most exciting players in the league to watch.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to how he moves. And he moves in a way that it looks effortless compared to other people, where he just is kind of in complete control. And
he moves like late senior year Derek Walton.
Okay, sure. You're going to be hyping up late senior year Derek Walton, like a Hall of Fame ballot sometime. You're going to be all in with that. I can see it. He has this easy athleticism to him that makes him able to get to his spots, finish. Late senior year, Derek Walton wasn't going up and throwing down a dunk on a backdoor.
No, but I'm talking about that the way that he plays out of screens, like his kind of tempo and just pace to it. Like he never looks like he's rushing.
I agree with that completely, and I think there's still spots where he makes a bad pass or a bad read, but those are going to get worked out. And there's a lot of guys on Ohio State's roster on the wing who people have always told us are talented, but they all kind of look just like guys. Like I have a really hard time taking any of Ohio State's wings and saying one is better than the rest.
Mm-hmm.
DJ Carton pretty much stands out as obviously this guy's special. He has that next level and all of that talent around him. They're all good players. You just need that one focal point. I think that's going to be Carton as we move forward.
Well, you could also say right now the focal point's also the defense.
Yep.
Because they rank fourth. I mean, they've played they played 3 games, and 2 of them are real-ass games, Cincinnati and Villanova. And they ranked 4th nationally in defense. No one scored more than 56 points against them. Their 3 opponents combined are shooting 37% from the field. So they're stuffing teams in closets. They have all this balance. They have all these guys. They're going to get Andre Wesson back here probably in the next, week or 2 or 3 or something like that. So we'll go buy, sell here. I am buying. I was buying preseason. I'm buying now.
I'm buying. I can't wait to see them play Stetson, Purdue, Fort Wayne, Kent State, and Morgan State over the rest of the month.
And then their early league games are Penn State and Minnesota. So
yeah, but the UNC game will be huge.
Obviously.
I'm in for that.
I'm in
All right,
for...
so we're buying the Buckeyes. And Chris Holtmann coaching defense is nothing new. They've had a top 25 defense every year he's been there.
But I just hope Carton is in the starting lineup by the time they get to Carolina, because Carton versus Cole Anthony could be pretty damn entertaining. Number 3 in Ken Palm's ratings, despite a 2-2 record, it's Purdue. What do you got?
It feels like a flashback to last year.
Yeah.
We recorded 3 podcasts probably just trashing Purdue in November and December last year. Like, this team's not going to make the NCAA tournament. Well, they can't they only have Carson Edwards. It's a 2-man team. We said all this after Michigan blew them out in December. We were completely out on Purdue. We were like, how does Ken Palm still have Purdue so high? Said all this stuff. And now here I am again, and I'm have no idea how Purdue is going to become a good team this year, and they've not impressed. They lost to Texas at home, blew a lead at Marquette, just completely collapsed in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Their best player, like their go-to option on offense, is a transfer from a low major. Maybe it works, and I'm skeptical to sell off completely, but it's hard not to sell here, is it not?
Did you not project Jihad Proctor to be their leading scorer?
I mean, I love
After
Jihad
4
Proctor,
games?
and I thought he was really good as a grad transfer. So I'm not completely surprised. I didn't understand anyone who thought Nojel Eastern was going to be the leading scorer, because I don't know how Nojel Eastern can score. But that comes back to my whole problem with this team.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nojel's averaging 5 points per game. He went 4 for 15 from the field in the losses to Texas and Marquette.
He's shooting 37% on the year.
Yeah, and that's with he went like 3 for 6 in both of their bye games. He went 4 for 15 against Texas and Marquette. That's obviously disappointing for them. You're right. I mean, you look at the roster and it's just like, where's the change going to be? I imagine for you, you were high on Aaron Wheeler. Have you seen enough games to kind of get a feel for where he is?
Well, when you're shooting 33% on 2s and 32% on 3s, you're still trying to find yourself. I still think he has nice moments. It's really been Eric Hunter as a sophomore who's been more impressive as kind of a scorer and a secondary option for them right now. But Wheeler, I could still see Wheeler figuring it out. Like, it's hard. You're a 6'9" wing kind of. It's a tough to fit into an offensive role, but
they scored 17 points in the second half against Marquette.
Against Marquette. It's not like it's a team that really plays defense here, people.
Right. And things could get even dicier here. They're playing VCU in Destin, and then Tennessee or Florida State. That could potentially be an 0-2 swing in Florida. And they have Butler on a neutral floor. The only good
Virginia.
And Virginia, obviously.
Virginia, the under of all under bets to ever be found.
That's at home. The only good news for Purdue is that it has probably the easiest December slate in the history of this new scheduling. They have Northwestern at home and at Nebraska, so that's a nice gift from our friends at the league office, because this team did not need the two heavyweight games early from the league, because this could go bad quick.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is it does seem like Nojel Eastern might be a little banged up. He was having all sorts of hand and wrist. I watched their game against Green Bay in the opener, and he seemed to really be bothered by his hand and came down on it, I think. So could be part of why he's struggled, and that could be he's not going to shoot 37% for the year.
Right.
I don't think that's possible, but man, it's a sell right now for me. But I'm scared to sell because we looked like idiots last year when we
I would hold on Purdue for only that reason. And Eastern only played 17 minutes in that game versus Marquette. Wheeler fouled out. I don't know. I mean, but they're hard to watch too right now. That's the thing. So you said sell, I say hold. Maryland at number 4. With a soft ass schedule so far. You want to rip Ohio State. What do you have to say about Maryland?
Can you be any less impressive at 3-0?
No, you can't. No, you can't.
There's just nothing to get excited about here right now because there's nothing to go off of. I mean, what have we taken from this? They did exactly what they should, but they played Holy Cross, Rhode Island, and Oakland at home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone's playing particularly exceptionally well. They're just kind of Maryland right now.
They're not.
And until you see Maryland prove that they're not just Maryland, they're still what we think of as Maryland, right? So they need to go and win some game that maybe we don't think they would or think that they wouldn't, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and they're not going to play a game that matters still for another 10 days. Whatever tournament they're in.
They're in Disney, right?
Disney, the Orlando Invitational, whatever
that
thing's called. And they open with Temple, which is average. They're like probably going to be at best a bubble team.
But that's a 3-game. I'm sure they play someone there.
Well, they have after Temple, they'll get Texas A&M or Harvard, which anyone getting excited about that? And they might see Davidson or Marquette on the other end. Like, that's about as good as that thing gets. And then they play home against Notre Dame in the Big Ten ACC. Their only non-conference game that I would say is especially challenging is at your boys from Seton Hall on December 19th. So this is the Turgeon. Make sure you get into the tournament schedule, it looks like to me.
This is a schedule with a lot of
It's a schedule that saves jobs. It's a schedule that saves jobs, baby.
Though. A lot of chances for us to go, there's Maryland again, losing to Harvard in the second round in Orlando on Thanksgiving, a game no one actually watches, but just completely writes off Maryland. There's a lot of
right. They'll go 12-2 in non-league. No one will give a shit, and then they're going to finish the season with 23 wins and be a 6th seed. It's the same goddamn thing every single time. But they have I'd say the good news number-wise is that their offense is pretty balanced, but they're shooting 26% on threes. No one on the team has made more than 4 threes in a game. Or, I'm sorry, total. And that's with Aaron Wiggins, who I think I projected as a possible breakout guy, going 4 for 18 to start the year. So
you're going to hurt your shoulder in this podcast.
I know. But at least, I own him when I'm wrong.
I'm holding Maryland.
I'm selling.
All right.
Just to be an asshole. Number 5, we go down to Archie Island, Indiana.
Wait,
who knows?
What are you looking at?
Ken Pom. No, did I miss one?
You skipped Michigan.
Oh, sorry, those guys. Okay.
Got to do it for the brand.
Michigan.
Right.
Nice win over Creighton. Managed not to have anything disastrous happen against App State or Elon. Game against Houston Baptist this week, and then off to Atlantis with you. You'll be in Atlantis with the boys.
Yeah, that Atlantis tournament will be... It's probably one of the best, if not the best, preseason tournaments, I'd say, as far as depth and overall talent.
Will you spend more time courtside, in the sports book, or outside?
Probably courtside, outside. That's my 1-2.
Just brief stops in the sports book?
We'll see. Anyways, back to Michigan. I think that there was a chance to completely put yourself in a world of hurt if you lose that game to Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an important win. It's also not really a win that you're going to say changes your perception of Michigan, whatever it was before the year. The fact that they won that game without Franz Wagner, I think, is important. Still, I think we just need to see a little more here overall. Where do you come down on Michigan?
I mean, as far as buy, sell, hold, I think it's an obvious hold here. The second half against Creighton, I still think is kind of a moment of, hey, this is the possibilities, and it looked pretty good. How sustainable is that? Their in-game peaks and valleys are fascinating because they can look really bad for stretches of time, and then rather quickly look like a pretty different team. I know that's fairly common for college basketball, but it just seems maybe a little bit more dramatic with these guys.
Yeah, so much of the way Michigan plays is jump shots derived from ball screens, right? So if those shots aren't falling, all of a sudden it gets a little dicey. Michigan wasn't making jump shots against Elon, and the whole offense kind of looked stuck in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan made all those jump shots against Creighton, and the offense looked incredible. The good news for the offense, I would say, is that Michigan's shooting 61% on twos. It's 12th in the country. That's what you want to see. Being able to create penetration, shots at the basket is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the best news for the offense is that Isaiah Livers is probably what you would have wanted him to be coming into the year. They can't afford for him to be this one game on, one game off type guy. It needs to be a constant producer in the offense, and he's done that. He put up 9 the other night against Elon, but before that it was 22 versus Creighton, 14 versus App State. In terms of him kind of growing into a more, a catalyst role, whatever you want to call it, it needs to be every night. And, right now, if you look at shot takers on the team, the 2 leading field goal attempt guys are John Teskey at 34 and Isaiah Livers at 33.
Yeah, and Xavier Simpson at 30. So they're all up there. I think the guy who stands out really as the surprise is Eli Brooks.
Sure.
He's shooting 50% on twos, 47% on threes. I'd say he looks he's not just shooting it well, he looks like he's a rotation player. He looks confident on the court, and I expected Isaiah Livers to be able to go out and make shots. And it was hard to really convince yourself that Eli Brooks was going to be this guy this year. It was obvious that Michigan needed him to be this guy, but he's doing exactly probably a best case scenario early on, and whether that can continue against better teams and whatnot remains to be seen. But that really shores up Michigan's backcourt that already had a lot of question marks.
My description for Eli Brooks right now would be good aggressive, where there's been times in his freshman and sophomore years where he would get the ball and kind of it would just be so frenzied, if that's maybe the right word, where I don't know, it'd be like the ball was on fire when it got into his hands sometimes. And this time it just seems like he is aggressive but under control.
Yeah, and everyone looks a lot better when you're making threes. And
Sure.
He's shooting it well, and he's getting catch and shoot looks and knocking them in a way that he just never did before, and that comes from so much confidence.
What do you make of DeJulius?
I think he is playing a really important role in this team right now because there's no one else to really play the 3, and he's by far the furthest ahead among Michigan's sophomores, I would say, right now. I thought he started not so great and looked kind of be forcing it in that exhibition and the App State game, but he's found a groove where he can attack a little bit, he can hit shots. He's a guy that obviously needs to hit some of those shots, but once he does, he starts getting downhill a little more. He had more great passes, I would say, recently in the last 2 games than he did really in any action we've ever seen from him. So I think that confidence is coming. I don't think that this 3-guard look that Michigan's playing is some sort of long-term solution. But DeJulius learning how to fit into that role will really help him play a versatile role off the bench moving forward, I think.
Yeah.
For an offense that you talk about having lulls, it's good to have a guy like that who can come in with a scoring mentality in a different way than maybe Xavier Simpson does.
It's fair. So buy, sell, hold. What do you got?
I will buy. I think that Michigan's only going to get better as far as getting Franz Wagner healthy. I think that the defense is showing signs of doing the right things, and I think that the offense will get there eventually and is still kind of based on what you'd want to see, which is Xavier Simpson in the ball screen.
I'm going to hold because I want to see Michigan play against any team with some size and a team that can play good defense.
Fair enough.
All right. Now to Indiana.
Okay.
Who knows what this group is? They have wins over Western Illinois, Portland State, North Alabama, and Troy. And the next 3 games are Princeton, Louisiana Tech, and South Dakota State. So that's 7 home games in November, for those of you keeping count. None against anything above, I guess, somewhat decent mid-major. Is that what you would call South Dakota State as a program? And Princeton?
No, this is a garbage schedule.
Okay, go off.
This is just one team better than 200th in KenPom in November.
That's right.
That's what we're doing here?
That's right.
I know that last year was rough, but come on. This is weak. And I can't take anything seriously about this team until they've played actual teams.
It is some interesting scheduling that they have. So not only do they play the 7 home games against bad to moderate talent, but then in December, they've decided to sandwich a game in between their 2 Big Ten December games. So in between their 2 league games, which is at Wisconsin and home against Nebraska, they're going to go play UConn at MSG. Now, UConn stinks, but still, you're
Florida yesterday.
Well, they also lost to St. Joe's, so I don't know what to make of UConn, but maybe we'll find out when St. Joe's plays Florida later this week who's good and who's bad of those 3. But yeah, so the decision to stick a non-league game between your 2 conference games, which no one else does because that doesn't make any sense, and then on top of that, in late December, they decide to play Arkansas on December 29th before getting back into league play.
It's a strange one.
It's a very strange schedule.
Most Big Ten teams won't really be playing any games of significance in December, and Indiana will be playing quite a few. UConn, right. Notre Dame, Arkansas.
Yeah, you basically you want to just play in an exempt tournament. Then you have your ACC Big Ten as a December marquee non-conference game, your two conference games, and then you just fill it out around, the edges. Instead, they've got Notre Dame in Indianapolis, Arkansas at home, Connecticut at MSG, and also their ACC Big Ten game is Florida State. It's a pretty tough game. I mean, it's in Bloomington, but that's not an easy game.
Yep. The one thing I'd add on Indiana, with the caveat that this schedule is atrocious, is Trace Jackson Davis looks every bit like a Big Ten Freshman of the Year contender. Mm-hmm. So he's been dominant. Again, I don't know how much size North Alabama had when he went and put 20 and 8 on him, but he's getting done in a way that you would expect. And this is looking like and they've also had a lot of injuries and some different lineups and stuff like that. So the schedule's worked out nice as far as getting to work up to what they want to be. And I know that Devontae Green missed a couple games. I know that Finney's missed at least a game, I believe. So some moving pieces there, and good to, I guess, warm up to the season for a month.
I would say the best news so far is 15, 19, 15, 16. Those are Jerome Hunter's minutes in the first 4 games. and he's gradually working himself back into, I don't think he's ever going to, not ever, but I don't think he's going to be maybe the guy that we projected going into his freshman year this early on. But the goal is to kind of get him there right by midseason, second half of the year. And it seems like he's at least possibly on his way to that, which I mean, people were talking about like if he was ever going to play again at one point. So that's terrific for Jerome Hunter and obviously for Indiana. The interesting thing when you watch what he's done so far, it's a lot of jump shooting, a lot of long twos, some stuff kind of in the paint. But I kind of at some point want to see, I will heavy buy Jerome Hunter again the second we can see some of that athleticism that you might remember, because he was one of those guys that just had that sneaky kind of two steps and could spring a little bit and finish at the rim. Back when he was like in the EYBL and all that stuff. So does he get there, and when would be my questions. But what do you think of A.J. Durham here? Starting off, I think he's 9 for 16 on threes.
Al Durham?
Yeah, sorry.
He gives them a nice secondary ball handler piece, and he was never really very efficient in that role, but he's a junior now. I think he's 13 of 18 on twos, 9 of 17 on threes. Those are crazy numbers. I don't know how sustainable that is and how much of that is just who Indiana's been playing again. But
right. That's the hard
he's played well when other guys in the backcourt have been injured, right? Like that's the good thing about his early season play. And I think this probably works out really well for Indiana to build some confidence and go into tougher challenges with that confidence, right? In a way that
trash the schedule. Now you're saying it's building confidence. It's a good thing.
It's a trash schedule, but in the end, it might work out well for Indiana. I mean, it also might just be a whole. I'm holding. I don't know what to make of this. I'm not going to buy into any early returns, but I'm not going to sell either.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I'll hold.
Next, come here for the hot takes. Hold on every team. Right here.
If they had blown out all four of these teams, I would be happy to buy because I do like their talent. But
I think they look like
one of them was pretty close, wasn't it? Was it the Portland State game? Was that the one?
Portland State was close-ish.
Yeah.
The other three were complete trouncings. I think that this team is probably better than a lot of people thought early on.
Right.
I'm just not sure how much better.
Fair.
Penn State.
Well, here's the thing that Lamar Stevens has been okay offensively. 4 for 12 on threes, and I think that was kind of the big question coming in, was what kind of shooter would he be? The good news for Penn State, though, is that Miles Dredd, Myron Jones, Curtis Jones, I think are playing pretty well, shooting the ball well. The win, I know Georgetown is not that good, but for Penn State early on to go and get a true road win at Georgetown is definitely positive trajectory, I think, for the entirety of this thing. Because for so long, some of the things with Penn State has been like a matter of also believing that you can go and compete in against real teams regularly.
It's a great win. I don't think Georgetown's particularly good, but you go on the road, you win at a Big East arena. That's a good win for Penn State, especially. Now I need to see some sort of consistency.
Yeah.
You need to go and you need to handle Bucknell and Yale, two teams that are decent. These aren't 300 level teams at home. And then I think you need to go and you need to win this preseason NIT. You play Ole Miss, and then you play either Oklahoma State or Syracuse. These teams these aren't top 10 teams. They're not top 20 teams. Go and show something. Go and win winnable games. I know Syracuse at MSG, whatever, but come on. I think this is what, if Penn State's going to really be this team that's going to make the tournament, Penn State needs to create a little bit of a cushion for itself. You can't be
1,000%.
playing yourself in game by game in January and February. You need to have created something to make people take you seriously early on. I think this is the opportunity, and it's a pretty good opportunity because these teams aren't amazing. You're not saying go beat North Carolina.
Yeah.
You're not saying go beat Duke.
Yeah.
Syracuse scored 34 points against Virginia. This team isn't amazing.
Like here's the thing. That's a great point because like even if Penn State's pretty good, it's still best case scenario in the league is probably 10-10, right? I would imagine. Like I can't imagine Penn State going 12-8 or something in the league. So if you go 10-10, you better win these games now because you're not going to get in because their ACC Big Ten game is Wake Forest, so that gets you nothing. Their other non-league game is Alabama, that gets you nothing. So yeah, you better win these games. You know, you go beat Syracuse on a neutral court, and when it comes down to getting into the tournament or not, that's going to kind of be the stuff that carries your water.
Yep. I will buy though. I think I didn't know. I don't like this Georgetown team, but to go and win there, I think is enough to buy a little State College stock.
Agree, and I think Mike Watkins can even play better than he has been. But their guard play right now is good news. I think they're showing something. So
I worry about regression with the backcourt play at Penn State, just as a rule. But we'll see.
That's fair. But it's November 18th, man. You know, all you have is the evidence in front of you.
It's true. Uh-oh. Wisconsin coming up next year. Buy or sell?
I mean, I think you have
Big
to buy.
home win over Marquette.
I think you have to buy. You know, I mean, an OT loss to St. Mary's in the opener that's fine. I feel like that's a wash, right?
Yeah, St. Mary's turned around and lost to Winthrop in the next game.
True.
But
It's true. But St. Mary's is a good program, good team, good talent. They'll be in the NCAA tournament. You lost in overtime on a neutral court. That's fine. But then going and pantsing Marquette on your home court. I mean, they didn't just win that game. I mean, they beat them 77-61. Had, 6 guys, something like that, in double figures? Yeah, 6 players in double figures. In terms of what I thought Wisconsin was going to be, I'd say this is as good of a start as you could hope for. And, you know, you have to give credit there.
yeah, it's a really odd situation to think about this Wisconsin team where no one in the rotation really has an assist rate over 15%. And before, like last year's team was all based on Ethan Happ having a crazy high assist rate and running everything. So it's really interesting to see them transform into this balanced team where everyone does a bit of everything, but there's not really a go-to guy. And seems to be working right now. I'll buy. I'm not excited about Wisconsin. I don't know what the ceiling is, but they're going to be a pain in the ass to play against for any Big Ten team, and they're going to grind out probably a 500 record in the league and be right around the NCAA tournament picture, I'd say.
Yeah, and you want to talk about a team that could potentially be in really good shape coming into league play. You know, they have Indiana and Rutgers as their December games. A trip to Tennessee on December 28th is kind of the highlight of their schedule. NC State in the ACC Big Ten. Do they go to an exempt tournament, Dylan?
They're in New York, one of the Barclays ones. They play Richmond, and then I'm not sure who's the next.
Well, now I'm curious, and I'm sure that people are too.
I think we have to give a little Nate Reavers props here.
Big Ten Player of the Week in the opener. Reavers.
He's been pretty good. He is blocking shots, finishing, hitting a few threes. His numbers aren't that great overall, all things considered, but he did have that big game against Eastern Illinois and
0 for 5 on twos against Marquette. Kind of weird.
Seems to be the focal point of the offense right now, as far as usage goes. I don't know. I don't know.
You're flying the flag. I know.
I can't get all the way in on Wisconsin right now, but I'm not going to sell either. You have the exempt tournament up?
I'm looking. At this point, Google should know I am never Googling a football schedule.
Legends Classic is
Okay.
the other side is Auburn and New Mexico, I believe.
And they open with
It's Richmond.
Richmond. And who's on the other side?
Auburn and New Mexico. Auburn against Wisconsin might be one of the biggest clashes in styles that we see all year.
That's a good point. That'd be an interesting game. Assuming they get past Chris Mooney and Richmond, which might be a 50-possession game.
Buckle up.
There you go.
Might be a lot of 50-possession games for Wisconsin this year.
All right.
Oh, boy. We got Illinois next. This team, man, I don't know.
I love it.
Talk to me about Illinois.
All offseason, the questions are around defense and turnovers, and then they come out and give up 90 points to Arizona, and they currently rank 339th in the country in turnover percentage at 27%. Come on, man. The good news,
turn the ball over that much.
The good news, let's throw some of that out there, is someone's pick for freshman of the year in the Big Ten is averaging a double-double so far. Young Mr. Cockburn, 14 and 10, averaging. The interesting story, though, I think, is Andres Feliz. Put up 23 versus Nicholls State, 21 versus Grand Canyon, 13 versus Arizona. If you remember correctly, like the second half of last year, he came off the bench and kind of gave them an interesting scoring option because he's not really a shooter. He's more of a put it on the deck and go and kind of like bully. He's like a bully ball guard where he just kind of throws his body into dudes and scores against contact and makes all kinds of trick shots and difficult. Puts the ball in weird spots and makes difficult shots. And he's doing that right now. So it's more like if the fact that he gives them another scoring option is a positive, but like if you're going to turn the ball over and you're going to give up 90 points, it doesn't really matter. So I don't know.
Yeah, a couple facts here.
Facts.
The three starting guards for Illinois had 14 turnovers at Arizona combined. That's just
that's how you give up 90
acceptable.
points. Yeah.
That's just awful. And I think a couple things are at play. They're playing Kofi and Georgie together quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That has basically ruined Georgie. He's shooting 46% on twos, just looks kind of a shell of himself. He played mostly at the 5 last year, right? So
Yes.
I think it's hard for him to play at the 4.
Well, because he's not a stretch guy at all.
I mean, he's 3 or 4 from deep, but he can't move and handle like a 4, right? So playing those two bigs together, you have a dominant offensive rebounding team, grabbing 44% of their misses, second highest rate in the country. That's great. But if you can't hold on to the ball and run offense, is it really that great? I mean, if you're turning the ball over this much, and I think a lot of teams that try to force two bigs on the floor at the same time do end up turning the ball over quite a bit. AO, I want to see more from him. I think he is a limited player in the half court right now and an electric player in transition. If he's going to be he's not playing like a guy who's going to be a pro and dominating the league like an all Big Ten player right now, I would say. And if you're going to, how do you turn this around? You're obviously not going to turn the ball over on 27% of possessions, but that's a really ugly number.
I'll tell you how.
And it's not just
you
against.
turn it around. You play Hawaii and the Citadel and Hampton and a non-D1 game. Can we talk about this?
Well, I don't think that's going to turn it around.
No,
they turned the ball over on 29% of possessions versus Nicholls State, 23% of possessions versus Grand Canyon, 29% versus Arizona. I also love the idea of pitching a Grand Canyon Arizona road trip as a NCAA tournament prep when every other team in the country just goes and plays an exempt tournament, which is a much more legitimate NCAA tournament prep. But it was a unique scheduling quirk to play those two road games. I'll give them to them.
Sure.
So they're going to not turn it over against Hawaii tonight? I just don't see that.
I mean, they're going to win by 20. They might still turn the ball over 20 times. But so do you think they need to go old school, two guys back to the basket if they're going to play Georgie and Kofi together?
You can't play two bigs together.
Well, they're going to test that theory, it looks like.
Like Georgie, all of his numbers are down, right? He's got a 93 offensive rating. He's getting teed up in games. Like, he just doesn't look comfortable in that spot. And I don't know. You also watch Illinois play and you're like, oh man, this is a fun team to watch. They seem explosive a little bit. Like the first 20 minutes of that Arizona game were entertaining to watch, but man, something needs to change with this team and change quick, I think, if they're going to be this trendy Big Ten contender.
This is the thing about, what's this, year 3 or 4 for Underwood? 3?
Yeah, it's got to be year 3.
Where
right?
it's, that he was the one who spent all offseason saying, yeah, we're going to change things up. It's not going to be this, kind of throw the ball away, crazy defense, just try to get out and score, because that shit does not win in the Big Ten.
And the defense is different. They're not forcing turnovers. They're actually grabbing rebounds. Those are good things on defense. But now the offense is turning it over. Turnovers weren't a huge issue for this team before. We're average on offense, turning the ball over. Now they're terrible.
I mean, last year, what did they rank in? They ranked 11th in the Big Ten in turnovers last year. They ranked.
How many stats were they better than 11th?
Is that the measure? Okay. All right, buy, sell, hold.
I'm selling.
Selling. Okay. I will hold.
Oh, good luck.
All right.
Got another sell coming up next. Well, let me check the standings. Yep, another sell coming up next.
Iowa with that home loss to DePaul is going to go down as one of the all-time trash performances I've ever seen.
They didn't just lose.
They got
punked in their own building.
Yes.
By DePaul.
By DePaul. I don't know.
So,
I don't know what to make of. You want to talk about hard to watch? Iowa is hard to watch right now. 19 turnovers against DePaul. 6 made threes at home. Wieskamp is, I don't know. He's kind of looks like one of these guys that is in that weird middle state of like, am I supposed to take every shot or am I supposed to help get other guys involved? He's going to see every team's best defender. Teams are going to cheat and help on him all day. They're in a bad spot, and I'm not.
You can't play two of Jack Nunge, Luka Garza, and Ryan Kriener on the court at the same time, especially when you have slow guards.
Yes.
You're never going to be good defensively like that. And that's exactly what they're doing.
How many points? What is the final score of Iowa versus Texas Tech in Las Vegas?
Oh, Jesus. I have not watched Texas Tech yet this year, but I'm going to go with Texas Tech by double digits easily.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. 298th in effective field goal percentage defense, and you've played SIU, Edwardsville, DePaul, and Oral Roberts. It's not like you're playing anyone good.
No.
Sell.
Is that it?
Feels like a waste of Jordan Bohannon if he's going to try to play.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know. I'm off. I haven't been on, but I'm
I
off.
haven't. I saw a decent amount of the DePaul game. I didn't see any of the Oral Roberts or the Edwardsville game. How has Bohannon looked to you?
I only also saw the DePaul game, and that was enough for me to tune back in December. But
he scored 3 points in 16 minutes in that game. It was basically he was out there, but he wasn't out there.
Yeah, and he had 11 against Oral Roberts. And I mean, you know what he can be. He doesn't look completely healthy to me, and it seems like doing a lot to ask him to come back early. But I don't know. Is he going to – basically, Iowa's game plan last year was to hope that Jordan Bohannon could do something crazy late in the game and bail you out. And if he's at not 100%, it's going to be even harder for him to do that, right?
True. All right, so we're both selling. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Rutgers, 3-1 on the season. Could have done without that loss to St. Bonaventure in Toronto this past weekend. One of the stranger games you'll see. Of course, that was the game that was scheduled for Eugene Omoruyi. Did I pronounce that right? Omoruyi to play at home. He's from Ontario. They scheduled that game, and then he decided to transfer to Oregon. And then they went
the next day.
The next day, and then they went and not only played the game anyway, but then lost to St. Bonaventure, which will probably be a middle of the pack A10 team this year. They also played a really close game against Drexel at home. So, Geo Baker, your boy.
My boy.
7 for 25 on threes through the first 4 games. Your thoughts?
Here's what I'll say on Rutgers. They have more pieces than I think they've had in a while, right? Like,
agree.
More legitimate guys who you can at least see playing in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Most Rutgers teams of the past however many years have had 2 or 3 maybe. This team has a legit like 6 or 7 guys who are like, all right, that guy's a Big Ten player. They just need to figure out how to all get on that same page and be good Big Ten players, right? I don't completely see that. I think Ron Harper Jr. is really good. Jacob Young coming over from Texas is a good spot, but he's a volume shooter who just never seems to actually make a lot of threes. A little scary to build around. I don't know. Where you fall in Texas? I mean, Rutgers.
Here's the thing. Like, I picked them to make the NIT this year, and that would be a good
thing. People do pick.
When it comes
That'd be a big step.
When it comes to Rutgers, it would be a big step. And for what it's worth, like we'll trash on other teams' scheduling, but like I think they actually have the right idea this year. Like you don't need to go get your shit kicked in, a la like what Minnesota is doing right now. Like that is not the schedule for that this Minnesota team should be playing.
We can talk about that.
But Rutgers. You know, they got Stephen F. Austin next, and then NJIT, and UMass, and Pittsburgh in the ACC Big Ten, Lafayette. They also play a non-D1 game in Caldwell. They'll go, and they have Seton Hall at home, so at least a chance for one marquee win.
I have a Rutgers take. They're winning the battle for New Jersey.
They're going to beat Seton Hall.
Yes, at home.
At the Rack.
The Rack will be bumping. I think they lose another game to a team outside the top 100 in the non-conference, but I think they beat Seton Hall. There's my Rutgers prediction. If that's buy or sell,
that's quite a prediction. Well, if you're saying they're going to beat Seton Hall, you're buying Seton Hall. You're buying Rutgers.
But I think they could lose to NJIT.
Well, that would be losing the battle
NJIT,
of New Jersey.
the champs of New Jersey.
Yep, I like it. I like where your head's at. Of course, like usual, Rutgers gets screwed in its early Big Ten games. They will play at Michigan State and home against Wisconsin. Have they started 0-2 in the December games every year?
You say Rutgers gets screwed, but they also get an extra Big Ten almost home game this year. Okay. Playing Michigan in Madison Square Garden.
That's true.
It's kind of break that Rutgers doesn't always get.
Big Ten games have been lost to Minnesota, lost to Michigan State in 2018. Last year it was lose to Wisconsin and lose to Michigan State. This year they will lose to Michigan State and they will lose to Wisconsin. Oh, they could beat Wisconsin at home.
They've had some big wins over the Badgers in the past.
They could beat Wisconsin at home. So if they come out and go back-to-back wins over Wisconsin and Seton Hall, they're cooking with gas, man. That's an easy NIT bid.
Lock up that. Don't you have to be 500 to make the NIT? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Or something along those lines.
So they got work to do. That St. Bonaventure loss is disappointing.
So are you buying or selling in Rutgers?
St. Bonaventure, before beating Rutgers, lost to Ohio, Vermont, and Siena.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Speaking of a team that... Oh, go ahead.
I hate to do it, but I might be selling on Rutgers. I'm really disappointed by that St. Bonaventure loss. And Drexel is not good, and they almost lost to Drexel at home.
Not great.
Not great.
Minnesota.
Yikes. talk
This
about
is
the
just
schedule.
suicidal scheduling. You're setting yourself up with games that aren't going to look.
This is Illinois last year.
Yeah, they're games that the teams are good enough to beat you, but not good enough that people won't think you have a chance. And they're all away from home.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're 1-3. And I'm not sure where you go from here. So Minnesota lost to Oklahoma on a neutral, Butler away, and Utah on the road. And this Utah team is not particularly good.
No.
The thing is, I don't think Minnesota played particularly terribly in any of the games. They were, but they're just now you're trying to dig out of a 1-3 hole, and I don't know. I don't see it. Where are you at?
So here's my problem. I have not seen Minnesota play. So full disclosure, I can't really talk about what they look like or anything like that because I have not sat and watched a single game. But yeah, again, this was not the year for this schedule. They still have a true road game at Oklahoma State, so they're gonna lose the Oklahoma double dip. How often?
Semi away.
That's in Tulsa.
Where's that game?
It's in Tulsa.
Okay, it's not a true road game. It's a false road game.
Okay, well, Tulsa's a little bit closer to Stillwater than it is to Minneapolis.
It's true.
It's fair.
Marcus Carr has been the go-to guy. He's a transfer from Pittsburgh. He is shooting 47% at the free throw line,
Wow.
36% on twos, and 29% on threes. Those numbers are not pretty, and they're not that far off from his numbers. He was a good free throw shooter at Pittsburgh, so that's probably an anomaly. But I like Daniel Otero has been really good.
Really good.
I feel like this team could be decent, right? It's just going to be hard to get the season back on track when you've already lost 3 games by 10 days into the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's, when you talk about buy-in and stuff like that, it's brutal. And good God, they're shooting 59% from the free throw line as a team.
Yeah. So of note, this Minnesota team shoots threes in a way that no other Minnesota team ever has.
What do you mean?
They're shooting 48% of their shots from three-point range. They were basically around 32% over the last 3 years. So this is a perimeter-oriented team. Carr will shoot a lot of threes. Cal Schur will shoot a lot of threes. Peyton Willis, another transfer, will shoot a lot of threes. So they're trying to rebrand themselves as this team that actually shoots threes, which is a step in the right direction. But, man, got to win some games here soon. Turn it around.
They get CMU on Thursday, Fire Up Chips, heading out to Williams Arena. So, I mean, they just need to kind of get some momentum going here. Because who are their conference games are at Iowa and Ohio State at home. So, I don't know. Minnesota's a, 6 or 7 win team in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think there's a clear gap. Like I think they're closer to like the Rutgers, Iowa, Illinois tier than the bottom tier.
That's fair. That's fair.
And the problem is that losses in the conference might sting because Minnesota has lost so many games in the non-conference, right?
Yes.
Like they're going to beat some people in Big Ten play, I think, and that is not great if they don't win a few games into the non-league schedule.
All right. I'm selling.
I'm selling as well.
Now, here we go.
Good stuff.
At number 13, Northwestern, which might have the strangest start of a season in modern Big Ten history, with a loss at home to Merrimack, which is a transitioning, right? Are they a transitioning D1 team?
Yes.
And then a home win against Providence. So Merrimack lost to Maine in its opener by 20, and then won at Northwestern. And Providence, hold on, has 3 wins against nobodies and a loss to Northwestern. Man, these are your boys.
They're your boys.
No.
I'm confused. I am I picked Nebraska to finish higher than Northwestern. So Nebraska.
Right.
Are
I'm
my
rooting
boys.
for Nebraska to finish in last.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Here's the thing. This team
that's the
has.
bet, at least, just so people are clear here.
Yeah. This team has no shot creation. 72%
Shot creation.
of their made field goals have been assisted. That's a crazy stat. So no one can create their own shot. What's wrong with that?
That was just a really funny statement about Northwestern after the start of the year is shot creation, breaking down their shot creation. I don't
They
know.
can't
I love
score.
it. That was just classic Dylan. Go for it.
They,
Keep going.
they can only
Give me more.
cut and pass. So they can't shoot. So you have to basically get a cutting layup. So you're going to have games like Merrimack where you look terribly. But if you play a team that is going to leave you open, like let's pull up this Providence box score. 17 assists on 23 field goals. Like that's literally what it will take for Northwestern to score in games this year.
Sure.
And they all are going to be near the basket. The two go-to guys are Pete Nance, who has not really looked very go-to guy like early on, and Pat Spencer, who's played lacrosse for the last 4 years. That's what this team is.
The most promising thing about Pete Nance is 8 rebounds against Providence.
Providence can miss a lot of shots.
That I would not predict. Yeah, but Providence still has some thicker dudes, and I would not describe Pete Nance as a thick dude.
It's fair.
I don't know. I'm watching every Nebraska and Northwestern game down the stretch, or over these next couple of weeks, and I'm pretty fired up because Northwestern has Radford, Norfolk State, Bradley, BC. They might get some dubs here.
We'll see. I would say Northwestern, just by the fact that they beat a real team, I guess probably has had a more impressive start than Nebraska to the season.
I'm buying.
I'm selling on Northwestern.
All right. Nebraska. Opening losses to UC Riverside and Southern Utah, followed by a home win against South Dakota State.
The Southern Utah game was maddening. Just brutal basketball. And one of those games where when you're a Big Ten team and you should have lost the game and then you get incredibly lucky to send the game to overtime, you're supposed to go and win it in overtime, right? Mm-hmm. Instead, this went to a second overtime and then just a loss. It might actually have been one overtime. I don't even remember. No, it was just one overtime. But either way, you can't do that. You can't come all the way back, tie the game on a buzzer beater, and then just not figure out a way to win in overtime. I don't know.
Your boy Hoiberg.
Pace and space.
They are cranking at almost 75 possessions per game. They are the most in the Big Ten. I think a full almost 2 possessions over Iowa. Actually, Penn State's up there, which is kind of interesting. Illinois, and then Maryland, Michigan State are down there. But yeah, they're definitely living up to the billing of playing some fast basketball. I don't know if it's good basketball because they're playing that fast, but their effective field goal percentage is 43.7%, which ranks 289th in the country. That's probably just points to its talent, right? But 23% on threes. Don't think it's going to get it done, boys.
And it was a 2 overtime game against Southern Utah. Ken Palm's website's broken. Got to get on that, Ken. It is just not a very talented team. Mm-hmm. Cam Mack is a proud representative of my moving screen fantasy team, but he needs to stop celebrating after every made basket. It's just too much. I can't deal with it. I was just losing my mind against Southern Utah in a game they eventually lost. I can't. I'm not there for that. But that's where I'm at with Nebraska. I'm selling. I had optimism in the preseason, and it is crushed.
I will also sell on Nebraska. What do they have coming up? That's the real question.
Washington State on a neutral.
They play Southern.
Cayman Islands.
on Friday. Then some Washington State. It's going to be a long couple months here for Nebraska.
Creighton on the road. Creighton might score 110.
Yeah. Their December Big Ten games are Indiana and Purdue. That's not exactly the best double dip there.
We always talk about like the hunter versus the hunted and stuff like that, right? Like when you're a good team, teams are really gunning for you. Nebraska's going to be hunted because they're like a wounded animal and people need wins. Mm-hmm. So people are going to go into that game like, man, we better beat Nebraska. We need this win. And that's just going to set up poorly for them, I think.
That's a good point. Speaking of the Fantasy League, I haven't checked the standings. Do you have that handy by any chance?
I can pull it up.
Let's see. So this, of course, was myself, Dylan, Zach Osterman of the Indianapolis Star, and Graham Couch of the Lansing State Journal, and Jim Polzine. Did I get it?
I think so. Pronunciation's not what we're here for. All right. You ready for the standings?
Yeah, go for it.
First place.
Uh-oh.
Graham Couch.
Whoa! That's an upset.
Second place. Yours truly.
Hmm.
Third place. Jim.
Oh, no. Not
Fourth
good.
place.
Not good.
Quinn.
Okay.
Fifth place. Zach.
Well, that's not a surprise.
The good news is that you're actually third if you do by fantasy points per game because the games played are a little. You only have 22 games played. Graham and I have 25 games played, so you're in the ballpark.
Okay, take it.
My favorite thing was to go and look at the best players that we didn't draft. Like
yeah,
who was
great point.
You know what I mean?
Great point.
So if you go to all players here, the most productive player. The second most productive player in the league by our fantasy standings is Trace Jackson Davis. No one picked him.
Oh, okay.
Justin Smith. No one picked him. Andres Feliz is up there.
Yeah.
Aaron Wheeler, Ron Harper, and Al Durham.
Ron Harper's like 4 for 14 on threes this year.
Good to know. But those Indiana guys, I don't really buy. Like they're playing, their schedule plays into that,
yes,
right?
For sure.
But there's your little fantasy update in the moving screen draft.
That's the race to the slippery noodle is what we're going to call that. Following those standings, because there will be a debt paid at the Slippery Noodle in Indianapolis during the Big Ten tournament. There's the race to Dubai, right? Is on the European tour. We have the race to the Slippery Noodle. So we will follow along all year. Should be action packed. Is that it? You got anything else, man? What do you think about the league as a whole? So the league as a whole is 33-13 as its conference-wide record. It's fourth among conferences in Ken Palm's ratings. Do you buy or sell the league, Dylan?
I think the league is sending a Christmas card to the Big East for providing a little bit of influx of wins here because they needed that Gavitt Games performance, and I think Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan all picking up those wins, Penn State, those will help. I'm not buying the league. I'm not sure that there's a lot of legitimate contenders in the league. Michigan State and Ohio State look elite, but who's third, right? I mean, who do you really love beyond that? Feast Week will be really interesting. That's can really set teams apart in those exempt tournaments, and I don't know. I'm selling to holding on the league as a whole. Where are you?
The thing is, like, Ohio State is a little bit further along than I thought. Indiana is probably a little bit further along than I thought. I don't know what to make of Michigan. I don't like Maryland. Purdue's kind of disappointing. It's, I guess, hold to sell feels right to me. Maybe if Rutgers had beaten St. Bonaventure, I'd be more willing to buy the league as a whole, but that one really hurts.
Like, is Penn State a top half Big Ten team? And if it is, what does that say about the Big Ten?
Great point. Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. Like Ken Palm projects 6 teams to finish between 11-9 and 9-11, and that feels very right to me. The question is going to be how many bids do those teams get, and that's going to basically be determined over the next 2 weeks and what the conference does in these meaningful non-league games.
I think the ACC Big Challenge will really set the tone because those matchups are always a little more. I feel like the Gavitt Games matchups were a little uneven, and there were a few gimme games. And like the ACC Big Ten is set up to the point where if you win it, I think it really does say something about the league. Mm-hmm. And not everyone participates in the Gavitt Games, right? So I'll be looking at that, and I think by early December we'll have a much better picture of what this league really is.
Yeah, and as the Big Ten has, 2 teams are under 500. 1 team is at 500. ACC has a handful of 1-loss teams, but no one's under 500, and Wake Forest is 2-2. Like, the bottom of the league is bad. Is legit bad.
In the Big Ten?
The Big Ten.
Yeah.
And, the bottom of the league in the ACC, which has already played a couple league games, oddly.
One.
The bottom of just one. The bottom of the ACC is Wake Forest, Clemson, BC, Pitt, Georgia Tech. It will be interesting to kind of see where those games go. What the bottom half of the Big Ten can do versus the bottom half of the ACC, because it's oddly that carries weight when it comes to postseason stuff.
Yeah, you could have 2 Big Ten teams that are quad 3 games, basically, right?
Right.
Whereas in the past, you've had it where almost all the Big Ten teams are quad 1, quad 2 type of games. That's what can really hurt you down the stretch.
I'm guessing, so North Carolina, Ohio State is Duke, Michigan State. Those are the 2 premier.
Michigan, Louisville?
Is that premier? I don't think that's on the same level as those other 2 games.
I feel like those are the top 3 teams in the ACC.
Right.
Who's Maryland play?
But Michigan is not one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten.
That's fair. I think in terms of TV audiences, though, it would be up there. In that mix.
Conversation. And the mighty Blue Devils will play Cal, Stephen F. Austin, and Winthrop before Michigan State. Some real scheduling there from the Blue Devils. All right. You good?
I think we're rambling through schedules that people just don't care about at this point. Call it a show.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to whatever. This is like a 2-hour podcast. We're going to sign off. Be sure to subscribe to UM Hoops. Be sure to subscribe to The Athletic. Subscribe to the pod. Leave a review. Be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers. Good night.